No, I think it would be improper not to start off by congratulating the Mamelodi Sundowns Football Club. Congratulations to the board, the Motsepe family, the president, senior management, backroom staff, and everybody involved in the success. These type of achievements, particularly because it's the 5th one in a row, cannot be attributed only to one individual, but a collective, and it shows the collectiveness and the spirit that is within the club. So congratulations to the supporters. I think this one is a little bit special for them because they missed out on last season's celebrations. So to be part of the journey this season, I think is very special for the supporters. They've been with the team ever since COVID has stopped. Started with the Champions League to come and support, and now with the Nedbank Cup and the league matches, and they've been extraordinary for most parts. And then congratulations to the technical team, the coaches, Coach Steve Kompela, Coach Mangoba Mniti, Coach Wendell, the support staff, the rest of the technical team, our bios, conditioning coaches, the analysts, our ground staff, kitchen, Sis Aurelia, everybody involved, Graham with logistics and facilities. It's a big club. If I have to mention everybody by name, we'll be here till tomorrow. So I will cover everybody by saying congratulations to every employee and every member, the security, your department, Shoops, and marketing, and everybody involved in supporting the team and the players. And then a special word of congratulations to the players. You run out of superlatives to try to describe them. I mean, what they showed today is exactly a reflection of who they are. Honest, hardworking, and extremely diligent. A pleasure to coach. Not easy to lose a Champions League game and to be so broken the way we were, and then come and show this type of spirit and performance. Normally, some teams would crumble after such a setback, but they were strong and they showed good perseverance and this resilience that makes them so special. And congratulations to them. They've had a season that is better than last season already. And we are very proud of them, and I'm sure the Sundowns fans are also very proud of them. But yeah, back to the game. A difficult game against a very good side. Eric Tinkler's sides are always very difficult to beat. They started with a 4-3-3, and was very difficult sometimes to try to always be in control and in charge of the game, not just from an emotional perspective, because we were a little bit shaky. And in moments when we had to suffer together, we suffered together, but we still created a lot of very good chances. And we were a little bit unfortunate. Grant Kekana had a chance inside the box. With a bit more composure, we could have had better situations from Rulani, better situations from Newa Maema, better situations from Mshishi, from Peter. But we pressed very well. We pressed sometimes with two, and to try to confront that triangle with Fidel and Phyllis and Faseka. It worked a little bit, but then they got that extra man sometimes, and then we had to go with the diamond. And once we went to the diamond press and we brought a little bit of security around AJ, we stabilized and had a little bit more control, especially closer to their box. And then we created some very good opportunities, but we were just let down by a bit of anxiety. And as I said earlier, that emotional instability that comes in, and then we struggled a bit on the second phase after regaining the ball. But our high press was very good. Even in the second half, when they wanted to build from the back, we were actually very good on the high press. So a good effort, and maybe unfortunate to come away with only a point. But also credit to Cape Town City. I mean, I think you saw Eric's experience today when they went into a back three, and they brought on Cupido in moments when they were really struggling, and I think more than anything struggling with altitude. And then he had a third centre back to give a bit of security, because there was a lot of mistakes starting to creep in within the defensive line. And when you've got two, you've got very little cover, especially when we had 2 versus 2 on top. And when we brought Peter Shalulile a little bit closer to Tembazwane, then it looked a lot more threatening on transition. But okay, good effort, and we knew we needed a point, but at Sundowns we always play for 3 points. So yeah.
Coach, congratulations on the league title. As you said, it's a 5th title in a row. What would you say, not giving, obviously giving away too much of your secret, what would you say Sundowns are doing better or differently compared to other teams in South Africa to dominate them for the past 5 years or season?
Well, I don't know what the other teams are doing. And it's a good thing that I don't have to really get into their space, and with all due respect. But Sundowns is a club that has a vision that is surpasses just the levels of, I mean, for an example, if you look at how the club felt, and I mean the entire club, supporters, management, players, technical staff, after we lost against Petro. I mean, normally you get to the quarterfinals of the biggest competition on the continent, and if you look at the Champions League in Europe, for an example, big clubs like Bayern, PSG, with heavy investments, were also out. And it's a difficult competition to win the Champions League, but the feeling amongst the Sundowns family was that we could do better and we should have done better. And that only is just a reflection of the ambitions that the club has. And when you are driven by those sort of ambitions, those sort of standards, then excellence is not something to be celebrated. And you try to push on and try to push on. But the reality also is that we do not have a God-given right to win any trophy. And we've got to earn it and work extremely hard. And those are the lessons. And we take those with a lot of humility, because we know we should have been in the semi-finals. We know that the type of season we've had in the Champions League is a season that should have allowed us to fulfill the ambitions of the club. People had hope, but that hope came and was driven from our performances and nothing else. And then the disappointment comes because you raise the expectations, you give people hope, but in a certain moment, even when you accept that you've got no God-given right to win the Champions League, and then with a lot of humility, you have to accept that you'll try again next time, and that's football. Football says to you, you may not have won the match, but if you win in relation to understanding that there is lessons to be learned about a lot of many things, including perseverance, including this resilience, and trying to build that within our squad. And that's the reality. If you look at the squad, it's a newer squad, and with only maybe Dennis, maybe Kennedy, maybe Tembazwane, maybe Villa. Those are probably the only players, a handful, that have won the Champions League and that understand the terrain, you know. But you got to build that, and even for Dennis and the squad that won in 2016 was a squad that won after 3-4 attempts, you know, and you build the experience of playing that continental competition. But it is just a reflection of who we are and where the club wants to go, and of course, when you set that type of standard where you just strive only for perfection, you just strive only to win things, of course it's cutthroat, you know, and the demands are extremely severe in relation to the fallbacks if you don't achieve the success. But that's where the club is, and the club expects that type of investment, not from a monetary perspective, but from a work ethic perspective, from a commitment perspective, from a human resource perspective. That's where the club is. So if you were to ask me, without including other teams, that's what I would say is probably the biggest difference.
before Lorenzo goes, anything to do with Nedbank Cup, the coach has a press conference tomorrow, so we'll address those there. Lorenzo, Pasha, Mahlatse.
Coach, a player like Dennis Onyango, he's a club legend, PSL legend. He's won his 9th league title today. How important is he to your squad going forward? Is he still going to be an important member of your squad going into the next season? And they say you learn more from losing than winning. You personally, as a young coach, how much have you learned about yourself as a coach and about the continental football after this defeat, also going forward in
Can
your
you
career?
keep it to one question with the other guys that's for, please? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. Look, it's very difficult to speak about Dennis without being emotional because of what he has done, not just for Sundowns, but what he's done also is incredible. Even for these young kids that are in Uganda, you've got to go to Uganda to understand the environment and understand not just from a political sense, but from a socio-economical sense in understanding the circumstances that he comes from, and to get someone to be best goalkeeper on the African continent and to win that award from humble beginnings to achieve consistently, not just with Sundowns, but Bidvest and Sundowns. And that type of story is a story that many football players would be very happy to write. There's a my favorite series on YouTube. It's called The Shop. And you see all these legends, they speak about how they've made it and their stories and their journeys, and they bring different musicians and artists and people in the entertainment industry. And maybe one day we will get to that type of space where even our own people are celebrated. But moreover, I think what's also important is that they get to share their experiences and get to share the secrets to their success. Because Oprah always says something very profound. She says, success has all the same clues. And if you look at Dennis's story, it's a story that could easily be related by a Themba Zwane, for an example, or an Andile Jali. And these people are very, very important to the club. Important in the sense that they understand what it takes to win and the price that needs to be paid. And that rubs off on Promise Mkuma, on Mkulisi, on all the younger ones that are coming through, and hopefully they then induct the next generation of the Sundowns players, because it becomes very, very important to sustain the success of a big club, because the reality is we work very, very hard because we understand fully that the story of Liverpool, the story of Man United, can easily be a Sundowns story. So we don't want that to happen to us. We've got that fear, and that fear drives us to be able to dig more and do more and push more, because we know that tomorrow we could also be experiencing a drought, and we don't want that, So that means every single time we prepare ourselves to improve and to be better than what we were yesterday. And that mentality is driven by the senior players, including a player like Dennis Onyango.
Something about being a young coach.
Yeah, it's difficult to speak about myself at the moment. I've made a lot of mistakes this season, I must tell you. Lot of mistakes. The game of Pedro reminds me of some of the mistakes I personally made. So you learn, you improve, and you get better. Away from home, we should have pressed with 2. We should have pressed with 3. We pressed with 2. And it's a mistake because Wydad showed us when Wydad played Petro. They played Petro at home. Petro won 2-1, and Wydad only pressed with 2. They went away. They hosted them away. Wydad pressed with 3 and beat them 5. And it was very, very clear that when you watch the game, that they struggle with a direct confrontation of a 3-man build-up and then a 3-man press. Because then the distances between the 3 that builds up and the 7 that's already in your half it doesn't allow them to get out with longer passes because you're putting stress on the ball. So you need to be a little bit more compact and closer to each other, which we didn't do in the first half, and we did that in the second half, even though we had devised a plan to do that. So I'm just making an example of one of the situations, and we made lots, but we grow and we get better, and we try to improve. But of course, with every match, with every season, we try to learn. We are not immune to mistakes, and sometimes we also let the players down. But that's why it's a team sport, and that's why we are there for each other, to pick each other up and help each other, and that's why we do corrections and we are honest with ourselves. But sometimes they are very costly, and that's what you learn, because as experience comes, you don't repeat those mistakes, and you learn a little bit more. But yeah, it is football, and we move.
Coach, I'd like to focus more on the emotional side of the players after what happened on Saturday. What is it that the club has done for the players? Because, you know, there was a lot of disappointment from the fans, the players themselves, the technical team. So from Saturday up until today, pre-match, what is it that the club has done for the players on the emotional side of it? Because I'm sure, you know, a lot of people were expecting Sundowns to go through. So just maybe take us through the emotional side of the support that the club did for the players. Was it a case of giving them Sunday off, just do what you can and just do not focus on the game? What exactly did Sundowns do in that regard?
Thanks, Pasha. Look, the good thing is we've already got a principle of 24 hours. We've installed that, and we speak about not being too low in the bad moments, but also not being too high in the good moments. There's a lot of very good moments we've had this season, but we've been able to have very good moments, and we played the MTN 8, and after that we won the next match. And normally with Sundowns, that becomes a bit of a problem. The next match, after a trophy celebration, go through the history, even while I was still here, 9 times out of 10 we would either draw or lose the next match, you know. And the good thing now is the players understand that the most successful people in the world, in whatever industry, have what they call a sweet spot, and they are very consistent, and they stay there. They celebrate the wins, but only for a short period, and they hammer themselves, and they feel the pain of failure, and that's very important, to feel it, to accept it, and make it part of your journey and your story. But at the end of the day, you've only got 24 hours to do that, because life goes on. The simple narrative was, if you understand how football works and how disloyal this game is, you understand why it is so important for you to move on, because it doesn't budget for pity parties. In football, you lose a match 5-0. 2 minutes later, it could be in Honduras, it could be in Canada and Toronto. There's another match that's kicking off. 5 seconds after you've lost 5-0, football doesn't wait and say, oh, let's cushion them, let's feel for them. And our players understand it. The reality is we did not have to do much except just give them a day off the next day, which is still part of the principles of recovery and regeneration. So it's not a big change. So 48 hours after a match, you have what we would call that golden window for your recovery and your regen. And there's different principles, whether it's a regen session and then a day off, or a day off and then a repeat. What we had decided is that from an emotional perspective and psychologically, we felt it was better for the players not to see the coaches, not to see each other, and deal with the trauma of the elimination in our own different ways. But then come back and dissect and analyze it. And we spent a lot of time speaking about it, debrief and showing the clips to try to improve. Because that's our journey. It's a journey that goes and hopefully takes us to the pinnacle. And that pinnacle is the ambition of winning the Champions League. We don't shy away from saying that is what we chase, and that's what the club wants. But unfortunately, sometimes we are victims of that ambition as well, because then you are judged by these lofty ambitions. Okay, it's better to die by the sword sometimes, because we'd rather be brave and upfront about what we want to achieve. And if we fail, then we fail in relation to the task and the assignment, and we don't fail in relation to showing ambition and being brave and giving what we feel the supporters of this football club deserve. So it was not easy, and of course the support is there and has been there throughout. The club always tries its level best to give support, not just to the coaches and everybody involved, but also to the players, and there is that deeper understanding that we are one family, and when you're one family in difficult moments, that's when you have to come up and be together, and I think the performance today showed that we are one, and we're a little bit unfortunate not to win the match.
Mahlatsi, then Maskepe, then the last one from Kansas.
Coach, just how difficult or easy was this championship? And whatever answer you have, why?
No championship is ever easy. It's difficult clubs, it's good clubs. Everybody plays with respect and to try to help themselves. What has helped us is we were very consistent, but also the experience of our players, the togetherness from our players, and even the ability to stay together, even in good moments. Sometimes we speak about staying together in the bad moments, but it's also very easy to get separated and have what you would call an animal farm, even in good moments. And that's what this group has done. They've shown love to one another, a sense of brotherhood. They've stayed together in the good moments. So you can never speak about a championship being easy. And maybe sometimes even for our own supporters, maybe sometimes when you win 4 in a row and then you win the 5th one, sometimes you take it for granted how much effort goes into being consistent for 60 matches in a season. And that's very, very difficult. Champions League, MTN8, Nedbank, you can get away with 1 or 2 bad performances and you need a bit of luck to see you through. But definitely not in a league title. In a league title, the best team normally 9 times out of 10 wins.
I think as a follow-up to that, Coach, because you're saying that you are overcritical of yourselves, even if it's 3-4 titles. But when we are looking from the outside, and when you look at what's happening in Germany, when you're looking at what's happening in France, it's a total farmers league, no disrespect. Does it even take out the motivation out of you? Because it just looks like at the beginning, it is one. And as a second one, just not to come back, my apologies.
You can come back after Kansas.
Okay, all right. No, if that's the case, then that's fine. But are we having a farmers league situation here?
Well, the question is not relevant to us because the reality is to have to use your term, and I don't want to say it comes from me because to not have that type of situation. In fact, I'm safer if I say that. To not have that type of situation, you need strong rivals, and maybe the reality is if you look at the stories that you've mentioned for Bayern, for an example, and how they win their titles, you look at PSG and then they go into that sort of level and the Champions League, and maybe the stimulation is not there. And of course, I think every time Bayern have done very well is when they've had very strong rivals in the domestic league, and Dortmund has in certain moments given them a good run for their money. PSG got to the final in the one season when Lille was stronger than them, and they had strong rivals, which allowed them to focus on not just building a team, but building a team based on perfection and very, very high standards. And of course, then that responsibility to make sure that there's stronger rivals in the league, unfortunately, is not our responsibility.
Do you have that here, though? Strong rivals?
Well, I think we have potential to have strong rivals. I think there are some of the teams on quality have some very good players. There are players in some of the teams that can play for a lot of clubs and maybe even play abroad. Maybe you've seen even with the Bafana selection how some of the players get into the national team, rightfully or wrongfully so, but they get there and they represent the nation, and they come from a lot of the clubs that have that responsibility to try to be the rivals for Mamelodi Sundowns. But the good thing is it's not my responsibility. And it's a difficult responsibility, and I'm very glad it's not my responsibility.
Coach, out of a squad of 35 players, you have 23 goal scorers, and out of the eight players who didn't score, it's 4 goalkeepers, and Ulemaresan hasn't made his debut. Dupa didn't play this season. Savera just got here. Out of the 3 January signings, 2 have already scored. Rulani is arguably the best player in the Nedbank Cup. I've always said the star player of this team is the system.
Yeah.
You know, you watch how Aubrey was inverting today, is how Lyle inverted against the Stellenbosch and he got his goal.
Mudao.
Same thing. You play different players. The system is still the same. Set pieces, 2 left-footed players, 1 right-footed. Is it in swinger, out swinger? How do you keep this star player shining? Where do we improve this star player for next season?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Look, from the beginning, we spoke about training for the group and not training for the team. And that becomes very important. And then we spoke about having to probably move 4 or 5 years ahead of where we feel, and we could be wrong because that's what we feel. 4 or 5 years ahead where football is going to go. Where in a certain moment now you go not towards a place where you talk about game model, not to a place where you talk about philosophy, but you talk more about what we call tactical culture. And tactical culture moves you into a space where you create automized scenarios. The way we play is the same, but we've got a culture of saying when we press in relation to the opposition, and then we study the opposition, but we still high press. We build up as part of the global way of how we want to see football being represented for this club. But the reality is certain positions that certain players take up are in relation to what we see from the opponent. And that's where football is going. Football is going into keeping what you would call your fundamentals, your principles, and then adapting what we call from a tactical perspective, sub-principles and sub-principles. Those are the ones that change in relation to not just the quality of the opposition, but also in relation to what the opposition does in certain moments of these schemes that we want to find on the pitch. So the most important for us has been trying to also evolve what we've done. So for an example, not a lot is being said about how we moved from 4-3-3 to 4-4-2. And even when we moved to 4-4-2, why we did not play 2 strikers and we played 2 false nines instead. And then we did what we call our hidden strikers were on the sides. Not and unfortunately, until we get to that level in South Africa, where we dissect really in detail tactics, maybe the game doesn't move and accelerate to that level as much as it can, because in a lot of football-rich countries, after a season, you'd have a technical study group that comes up with a technical report. And some of the detail that comes out are details that assist even the national teams within those countries, because the big clubs in all football-mad countries have a responsibility to drive not just the identity of the nation, but also to drive the success of that nation. Spain, you speak Real Madrid, Barca. Holland, you speak Ajax, PSV with Roger Schmidt. And you can go on to Germany, Dortmund, Bayern. The big clubs have that responsibility. And in a way, Sundowns makes its own humble contribution to that. But because it's not highlighted and because it's not taken out into a space where it is dissected, studied, and maybe used and evolved and made even better, by different coaches with different ideas who can look at something and say, wow, okay, this works, but maybe if we tweak it here and tweak it there, it could be even better. So some of the things we've done this season, we might not do next season. Last season, we could not play 4-4-2 because we didn't have a left-footed winger. And we went into the market aggressively to find a left-footed winger. And the local market gave us Neo Maema because we knew that based on what happened last season, 9 times out of 10, even when you high press as Sundowns, you win the ball and you've got one outlet. But in the modern game, you go to most of these big clubs.